What's up, guys? Thank y'all for joining us tonight. We got Captain Dean Thomas and Captain Scott Null joining us. This is a new test. We're going live on Captain Caleb TV YouTube. We're putting this out there so get a little bit more people could see it. Pretty fun stuff to grow the market and stuff. But we're gonna have the same show, same format. We're gonna have the same comments coming in, answering questions. Noel and I have been friends for quite a while now, many years, and I've got to know Dean through Bite Me, so this is going to be an awesome one. We're going to get kicked off. We got a lot of things to cover. Fishing has been really good, and this last week it's been a lot of lightning where we're at and a lot of rain, so it'll be some interesting topics of conversation. The surf was absolutely on fire for 2 weeks, and now it's how fast can you get away from a lightning storm, basically is what the pictures I'm seeing. We're not seeing sunrise pictures or sunset pictures. We're seeing lightning storm and tornadoes is what everybody's been posting. So that'll be fun to get through. Keep the comments coming over here on the side for us. Keep them going. Let's get them fired up and start rolling. First off, one thing I wanted to talk about, Noel, I know you've been on the tarpon. Talked to you earlier this week. You've had a good run the past couple of weeks. What does that look like?
It's been really good. Dead flat, calm, super clear water. I mean, just unbelievably clear all along the beach. I've gone probably halfway to Matagorda and then almost to Cedar Bayou the other direction. I've been going back and forth. The sandbars are just, you can see the third bar in 10 feet of water. I mean, it's just super, super clear. Outside Pascavallo, floating around out there in 7-8 feet of water, and you can see sharks down on the bottom, and they're just cruising around. It's been really cool to see. Haven't seen any tarpon around the pass, but they've been at the jetties. They've been all up and down, on the rocks, out towards Cedar Bayou. There was some further up north for a couple of days. Some guys got into them. I never did find those. When I went up that way, all I ran into was a bunch of skipjacks, and we played with those with the fly rods for a little bit, had some fun. Some big skipjacks, though. I mean, there were some mid-20s. Some, had a good time with those. A whole bunch of Spanish mackerel out there. If somebody wants to go play with those, they're just acres of those tearing up little rain minnows. Beaches have been fun, man. There was a little 3-week period there where it was dead slick, and I would say that in that 3 weeks, we had more eats from tarpon, more jumps, and landed more fish than I did all of last year in those 3 weeks.
That's awesome. Do you think we're going to catch another round of that after these storms, hopefully?
I'm hoping the tropical stuff stays away from us. You get this little thing here, and then there's something brewing out kind of the Eastern Caribbean. It's kind of messing around over there. They're starting to look at it, but who knows, man? It's that time of year, though. It's the time of year that we got to keep an eye out on the Gulf, and hopefully we catch that little slick spot behind this, and we can get back on them good.
Yeah, man. Sure. I saw that comment scroll by about the kayak lightning. You can't run from lightning in a kayak. And yeah, I have seen more lightning strikes up close in my kayak than, of course, any other situation. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to not be there whenever when your top speed is 4 miles per hour.
You need more horsepower.
Stroking it at 4 miles an hour.
Yeah. Without a doubt. It's a little different in the summertime. People talk about weather in the winter and the spring, especially wintertime when we're after big fish. We get some storms, but we're not as concerned about the lightning per se as just how bad the water's going to get on us and getting in and out of there and being cold. But these squalls that have been popping up, I think this is the most heavy, intense lightning we've seen in I can remember in a long time. I mean, we're getting lightning hits constantly out of these little squalls that are just pushing through one after another.
And so I just drove in from Houston to Aransas Pass this evening, and those storms on the prairie this evening were, yeah, man, I saw some pretty spectacular lightning strikes from El Campo through Victoria and they were off on the horizon, but man, whoever was underneath that thing, oh Lord.
Yeah, it's
and yeah, being on the water and having those kind of strikes, that ain't no fun, man.
You know, and it's a double-edged sword of looking at it from a recreational angle versus somebody who's running trips and working with customers. You look at the forecast for the next 8 days and it's 50 to 75% on the coast. And it's not the rain. You know, every one of those is going to have something that's just ugly. And that's a tough one.
It's bad timing for the people that plan a trip 2 or 3 months in advance. South Texas is desperate for rain. It's a blessing on one hand, but yeah, it messes up the schedule for sure. And of course, everybody's calling me. The phone said, "What do you think, man? What do you think what are we going to do?" It's like, well, we're going to do our best and haul ass if it turns to that direction. But you can't really make that decision until the morning of the trip, you know. And sometimes you run from them. You can spend your day avoiding them. You know, hey man, let's run 3 miles in this direction, and it passes by. 3 miles the other direction, it misses you. 3 miles in the wrong direction, and you miscalculate. And the best thing I can say is I carry rain jackets on the boat for everybody. I got 4 jackets back there that just in case I miscalculate.
Yeah, I got had a guy that called me. He's supposed to fish with me Wednesday next week. He was hitting me up yesterday. He's like, "Man, the weather don't look good." I said, "Man, that's 8 days out. I'm not going with 8 days out. I barely go with 2 or 3 days out."
But you can't trust the 8 hours out.
That's true too. But we got a big one blowing through here right now. It's my internet's kind of blinking on me a little bit. But hell, last year I ran 5 miles offshore to avoid one that was coming down the beach. And it had water spouts coming out of it, and it was a mess. So I just took off and ran straight offshore. It was nice and calm out there. It was like summertime. It was beautiful. And but inshore and along the beach, it was holy hell was going on, man. It was windy and lightning and all kind of bad stuff. I was in the sunshine. I needed sunscreen.
Was that the same day I almost died out there? The storm that you're talking about?
No, that was a different one.
and that's a good example of how you think you've got it figured out. And so yeah, me and a buddy of mine launched in Port O'Connor, and we went into the wind. Boom, bam, dude tried to kill me into the wind forever. And I was like, thank you, Jesus. The only good thing about this day is I'm going to have the wind behind me when we turn and go home. This storm brews right up over. It was actually kind of in between us, but we were watching the clouds, and he's like, what do you think? I'm like, I think we need to run for our lives. And no sooner than we made that decision, the wind changes directions, and it was worse going back. I don't know, 7 or 8 miles. We were way the hell down there. Maybe 40 miles is what it seemed like. But yes, Scott was out there the same day.
I was right by him. I just didn't know he was there. He didn't bother to tell me he was coming to Port O'Connor to go out and fish. And so I just ran right by him. I would have stopped and picked him up maybe. But
I was going to jump off of that boat and swim to the beach and walk home. It was that bad. Yeah, I mean, I was like, where's the life jackets? Get a little closer to the beach. I'm out. It would have been much more comfortable to walk 7 miles home instead of that.
Yeah, I've been in a few of those without a doubt.
Yeah.
Especially in some small boats that I shouldn't have been in out there, you know.
Yeah, we were in a little Hell's Bay, man. It was, and that's exactly what it was. It was hell. But for everybody listening, be careful. Stuff will pop up over your head unannounced. You know, the stuff that you can see coming. Another interesting thing, everybody's got these handy dandy iPhones in their hands with totally live radar up to the minute. 20 years ago, when I started this program, we have flip phones and they didn't have radar. I remember calling people at home that had a PC at home and would go, "Hey man, click on the radar and tell me what's coming my way." And there's no excuse to get caught in it now, unless it's one of those completely unexpected things that blows up on your head. It can go wrong, but use the technology in your hand and don't get caught in that stuff, man. It'd kill you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think, we put social media on all our phones so we could read everybody's lies. And I think the weather has been affected by that. It seems like they've been lying to us too lately. I think that weather forecast on there is pretty close to social media at this point. We had a question pop up here. It was a good one because Noah and I were talking about this last week, where the Reds been hiding in all this hot water. And, your comment to me, Noah, was, well, those fish in the surf love it. So it's kind of, we've got different games of attack when this hot water hits. Once you go through kind of what you've been seeing in the Bay, Dean, and this hot water versus kind of what Noel's been seeing in the surf and how that affects a little bit differently.
And so starting about 5 days ago, we had these storms that have been popping up, overcast skies, pleasant days for August. And man, the fish have responded quick. I mean, I had beautiful redfish, ultra shallow throughout the day, but we had cloud cover all day. It was not that blazing heat where, all summer or all of August, I've been preaching, be there before the sun comes up. You get an hour, 2 hours on the flats, and then they just lose interest. It kind of, when a water temperature was 86 degrees or 85 opposed to 89. And it made a huge difference. So yeah, this is, and I'll be out there tomorrow, so I'm interested to see how it all plays out from what we've been having. But I mean, my Reds responded quick. As soon as that cloud cover moved in and dropped the temperature 4 degrees, man, they were in a good mood. So hopefully it stays like that. And then for the next 8 days, it looks like we're going to have a chance to explore that theory.
A lot of days on the way in, I'll run in through Pascavallo and I stop along the edge of some of the flats that I typically are poling when I'm doing the redfish. And I've just been stopping and watching the water temperature and just getting a little quick read. And it's been anywhere from 91 to 94, right along the edge of those flats. I mean, it's freaking hot. But this week, it's definitely dropped down. It's in the mid to high 80s now. So that doesn't sound great, but when you're talking about 94, it sounds pretty good.
Yeah, no, without a doubt it does. Without a doubt. I was in Mansfield, man, it was 16 or 17, and we were in this time of year in August, and we took 95 and 96 degree surface temps on the whole flat out there. And it was just, a ghost town, and ended up same thing. We started fishing deep water and hitting the intercoastal on the edges of that and fishing heavier jigs, and then started running offshore in the morning and catching trout on the beachfront. But it's tough. But the real question is, we had dove season coming. So all this rain hit us like it does every year, perfectly timed, and farmers trying to cut crops. But do you think we see higher water temps in 2 weeks after this, or are we going to actually get an early September this year and have a fall to go fish?
I have a feeling that there's a little cold front supposed to be coming. Cool front. Let's don't call it a cold front. I heard that earlier. Somebody said cold front. I said bullshit. But now there's supposedly a cool front coming, and with all this cloud cover, maybe it knocks that temperature down just enough to make a difference where it doesn't climb back into the 90s again. It wouldn't surprise me any to see it jump right back up there. If it clears up and it goes dead calm, it's hot and it's 95 to 100 degrees as it can be in September. Yeah, I mean, it could climb right back on up. But I think we're over the hump for this summer. The question a while ago was, where are the redfish hiding? Where I've been finding them is just out on the flats early in the morning, tailing real good. And then as the day goes on and the sun comes on up, it warms up, they're dropping off into little holes, like the mouths of bayous, anything that's got just a little bit of a depth to it, they're dropping off into those. They're not really feeding real well when they do that. But every now and then we can pop them out of there with some soft plastics.
Hey man, we got north wind on Monday. North wind, 8 miles an hour on Monday on the forecast. That's
Have you gotten
front.
on any? Have you gotten on any kings yet this year, Dean?
Man, dude, they just have not developed in my area. We've gone and looked. Very few reports from they're around structure. They're all of the kings that have been caught here on the very near shore have been on the close rigs, on the 5-mile rigs. But as I've gone and looked for them, man, I have tried many times. And the sonar on the bottom, every square inch of the bottom is covered with bait. You control 3 all the way out to the 3rd buoy. The bottom is covered with bait fish. Nothing is pushing them to the surface. There's no birds. There's no surface activity. And I went with some deep trollers, man, the deepest stuff I could find that would troll like 20, 25 feet deep, and no strikes, man. So I don't know, man. The kingfish can be a hit or miss down here, man. Last summer, we pulled up to those jetties. You could drop surface poppers and you could not go 100 yards without getting blown up. And I have not caught my first king this summer, but I haven't, you go out there, you spend an hour, and I don't want to burn people's time up, waiting for one strike. So I spend an hour, maybe an hour and a half, 2 or 3 laps. And when you're not seeing birds, you're not seeing any bait balls, it's easy to give up. But I mean, September is still a good month for that. I mean, we're not actually into September yet. So anything can happen. But for me, and it's been a tough one.
Do you think, are you seeing any Null? Oh, hey, looky there, buddy.
I don't know. It was probably about 2-3 weeks ago. We had the blue water came in, and it came in through the jetties on good incoming tide, and there was actually kingfish skying. They were flying up out of the bait balls inside the bay. It was cool. I mean, they were, how kings will sky on you when they're running through bait. This was inside the jetties where the jacks and the bull reds are, and had some kings flying through the air with ribbon fish stuck in their mouth. So I thought it was going to take off from that point, but they disappeared pretty quick. They didn't stick around long. Heard a few people catching them right off the end of the jetties on outgoing tide, right along that rip, the clean water, dirty water rip, but not a whole lot. Not as many as you'd think. The guys that are trolling around the 30, 35 foot line, not really hearing much out of them either yet. I think the shrimp boats are working further out right now. And when I run up and down the beach, I can see them pretty good ways out. I imagine the kings are all around those instead of in tight, if I had to guess.
All right. Since we got put this back up here real quick, any suggestions on places to fish when we're down for the bite me feeding frenzy? Since we have the 2 guys that actually fish still, part of the bite me group on here, what y'all have anything to pass along for them?
That's Dean's backyard, man.
Yeah. I mean, the end of September can be amazing. And people ask me that question, they're always like, man, where do we fish in Redfish Bay? Down here on these wide open flats, there's no real X marks the spot. There's no place that are, really consistent hotspot producers. I mean, we drift miles of flats, we cover spaces. So, I mean, pick one. You can pick Ransom Flats or Dagger Flats, Terminal Flats, Estes. If the tide's up high, you hit South Bay, BNR. You can run across. And so if you're launching like at Brown Harbor or the Navigational District, all of those are within 15-minute boat ride. And you can go across the Corpus Christi Channel to East Flats and drift those. So tons of great spots to explore. And I mean, it's just Redfish Bay and all of our areas around here, I don't park in one spot or focus on one spot. I cover massive amounts of area. That's why wade fishing around here, man. If I step out of the boat and I'm wade fishing, I get bored real fast because I'm sitting there and it's just, I'm in this tiny little corner and it's all I got. It's as far as I can walk. I want to be in the boat here, and I want to be drifting, and I want to be covering area where you're drifting the grass beds, and every sand hole is a new spot. Every grass bed, every cast has potential. So, I mean, yeah, there's miles and miles of endless flats to explore. And they're all kind of created equally. I mean, we have this channel that runs from the pass right through the middle of the bay. It brings amazing fresh water, tidal flow. And I mean, and the Corpus Christi ship channel has the current just flies through there. There's so much opportunity that the answer to that is yes, there's always great places to fish. And if the tide is low, you're going to be closer to the intercoastal, closer to the flats on the west side of the bay. The east side of the bay tends to be more shallower. If you get a big high tide, if you're on a good moon phase and you got high water, then you go to that side of the bay. And me, myself personally, I mean, I'm always chasing that depth of like 18 inches to 2 feet of water is where I want to be. So depending on the tide, I'm looking for a flat that has that depth, and I'm going to go upwind and I'm going to drift, man. I'm going to drift 2 miles if I can and never stop.
Yeah, and that's a little different fishing style than, you know, some of the other coasts that we see, especially, you know, targeting coves, points, deeper drop-offs this time of year.
And shorelines. I mean, up there where you guys are, shorelines are critical.
And we're looking for bait, right? We're covering ground and we're looking for activity. We're not going to pull out on a dead spot and sit there and grind unless we've just got some gut feeling. And Gardner and I have had a lot of poor gut feelings and a lot of really good gut feelings. So,
yeah, you know, welcome to the join the club.
So there. Let me pop this one up, man. This one I really like. I actually chuckled at this one that was going. I'm gonna reach over and grab it. No, this is gonna be a good one. You to hop in on. I have my 2 cents on this one. I'm glad Caleb's not on here to put his dictation in this and what he thoughts, but you know, it's fly fishing for everyone to take a certain personality. I'll say it takes patience and coachability is what I've learned through all the years of my freshwater. My saltwater is very limited, but my freshwater, it takes a patient person.
Yeah, you gotta just be ready at the point that you want to do the fly fishing. You have to be ready to put the other stuff down. That's the biggest kick that I see on a lot of people, and I did it myself. I would go down to Port Mansfield, and I'd be going down there for a week. I'm gonna fly fish. I'd get down there, and I'd have my other gear with me. They're like, yeah, you know, I fly fished for 1 or 2 days, and I didn't do so good, so I'm gonna switch over. I want to catch some fish. You have to be to a point in your life where the catching of the fish isn't quite as important to you, the numbers, and it's more about how you catch them. And once you get to that point, it's like hunting with a bow versus a rifle. When you get to a point in hunting where you want to hunt with a bow all the time and put the rifle away, that's the same kind of deal with fly fishing. Nowadays, it's funny, I've kind of gone back the other way now. I feel like I've kind of mastered the fly fishing into things. And so now I just use whichever tool's best. Yeah, I'm not going to hammer with a wrench. If it's a bad day for fly fishing, no problem picking up a regular rod and reel. I'm not going to beat myself to death trying to make it happen with a fly rod. Whereas there was a few years there, I did. I mean, I would struggle, even if it was an overcast day, you couldn't see the fish, no tailing, I'd still fling that fly rod instead of blind casting with a regular rod and reel.
Yeah, and I think
it does take that personality to come up with that mindset of I'm going to just go out there, and if I don't catch a fish, I'm okay with it.
All it takes is $300 pars and a shirt that says you're confused. That is the truth. You know, one thing that I've seen guys in the saltwater world that are fly fishing, they've got bad habits when they have artificial in their hand. You show me a guy that'll fish with a topwater for 8 hours, regardless if the dude beside him in tails is just pulling slabs. That guy probably could be a pretty good fly fisherman just out of pure stubbornness of,
yeah,
I'm committed to this.
Yeah, and that's the word, committed. It's a high level of commitment to making it happen. Patience, commitment, both of those is just what it takes. But when it happens, the reward is worth the effort. I mean, it's just a different feeling whenever you nail that fish on a fly for whatever reason. I don't know. I guess it's in the culture. It's in your DNA and your soul bloodstream somewhere that just, I mean, yeah, it's a high level of everything that it takes to make it happen. And then when you get that trophy fish on the fly, I mean, it's just, then you just can't wait to do it again and again. And I do. I mean, I compare it to bow hunting precisely. You're going to sit there for hours, for days, sometimes a month, and you just wait until that 10 seconds of glory.
Fly fishing for me has always been, I don't like to fish. Florida is tough on me because I don't like, if I'm going fishing, I don't want to fish around houses. I grew up freshwater fishing and we chunked at docks and everything else. If I'm gonna get on the water, I want to get away from people. And, East Matagorda can't give you that. Obviously, the lower Laguna, you can get away, from structures and stuff like that. But the Colorado aspect of it has always been, you can fish all day and not see another person. And it for that one strike, that one rise is real nice. And I think bow hunters who are committed to that also have been good in the fly. We got a bunch of boat questions. I'm gonna throw them up here in a minute, but this was a good one that just popped up. Can you explain which side of a bay system you decide to fish on depending on the tide and the wind direction?
I have followed Dean down 361 many, many times when he said, we're going to go fish on the right-hand side over on Brown Creek Flats. And then he turns his right blinker on and then he turns left and goes over to the Lighthouse Lakes.
So when we were launching kayak trips and we would leave out of my shop and people were following me, I would tell them in the morning, I was like, if it appears that I am drunk, I am not. I'm thinking, I'm deciding. And so it's the big, well, especially with the kayaks, it's the biggest decision of the day because you're committed to the area, that the distance that you can paddle. But I mean, that's a tough one. How do you pick it? On really windy days, I don't want to be on a shoreline that you're just struggling and you're battling the wind. You're always looking for current. Wind can create current, but there's a point to where the wind gets too much to be specific, to control your lure and make it work right. That's a tough question, man. There's a lot of balance in between both of those things, and there's so much variety, in what those conditions create. That's a tough one to put your finger on.
A lot of times, go ahead.
Yeah. For me, it's poling. Yeah, and I know I'm going to pole all day, and if I've got an east wind, I'm happy with that. Southeast wind, then I can work with the sun at my back, and I know that it doesn't matter how hard it's blowing. But if I've got like a southwest first thing in the morning, then I'm going to have to be a little more picky and go to a place where I know is protected a bit from a southwest wind and I can still pole with the sun at my back. The wind direction makes a more difference to me as far as I'm going to plan my day on my pole. Which direction I'm going to be able to go the easiest and be able to get my people into the fish without struggling, without having to pole into the wind and have them casting into the wind.
Yes. And for me, that question, if it's me, I'll go stand and let waves hit me in the back and fish dirty water. And I'm completely okay with it. But a lot of times it's who's on the boat with me. Do I have a guy fishing with me that I know we can wait up a little bit on a jig head and still do a good presentation in dirty water and waves? Or are we in one of my smaller boats and I don't want to take a beating? So I'm going to go, or I have kids on the boat and we're not going to cross rough water. So we're going to go to the side of the bay not getting pounded is a smoother ride, and we're going to figure out how to try to target some fish over there. But if I've got 3 or 4 guys on there that want to grind and they can turn around and cast a bait caster into the wind with a little heavier bait, we're going to go set up on some stuff and do that. But who's on the boat and their capabilities and their tolerance to just crappy weather a lot of times tells us which side we're going to. The tides for me, especially East Matagorda, West Matagorda, we don't have as much down in the lower. Do I want to be where the water's coming out, or if it's going in, do I want to hug in a lot closer on shoreline? And that's kind of dictating where I'm going to start. If that water's coming out and I'm seeing a lot of bait, popping out on a corner or a point, I'm going to start further away from that shoreline and try to target that and then work into a drain. But if that tide's going in and I'm not seeing bait further out, I'm probably going to push my boat and sneak in a little bit closer and get out and try to work right up there against the grass a lot more on that tide. So, but I think that hits pretty good. What was y'all's biggest kayak win? You always talk about your biggest failures. I mean, I think y'all actually won something at one point.
It's a give and take situation. Scott had a badass one though, man. Scott dominated one year. It was killer.
Yeah, that was a fun one. It was in my own backyard in Galveston, so it almost doesn't count for me because it was my backyard. But I smoked everybody in that one. We had to have a trout, redfish, and a flounder. It was the longest of, you could have one of each, and it was the longest total. I think I ended up with like 74 inches that day, and the next closest was like 52 inches. It was a nasty winter day. My first fish of the day was like a 31, 32 inch red, and you could have oversized reds in those tournaments because of catch, photo, and release. And for whatever reason, I found a 21 inch flounder back in the marsh in December, and then managed to get a pretty good trout out of it too. But that was a good win. But my favorite one, absolute favorite, was Florida. Being able to go over there and fish in Florida against a bunch of guys that are damn good fishermen in the Tampa Bay area and pulling off a win over there. That was pretty cool. I think there was 80 something people in the tournament that day, and being able to win that made me feel pretty good.
Yeah,
when I whooped Dean's ass in his own backyard.
It happens sometimes. You get 2 guys on a boat and one guy's catching them, and get 2 guys in a kayak.
I was around the corner, dude. Scott. So we were fishing a kayak tournament. Scott, I could hear him. I could hear his voice. He was 50 yards from me. I got a red. I don't remember which one was first. I got a fish. La. And I'm casting and fishing. It's like 15 minutes later. Ooh, I got my flounder. Woo, he's whooping it up. And I was like, son of a bitch ass, I ain't got a bite. And I shit you not, it wasn't. I think it was 5 minutes until the next fish. Oh, I got a trout. And I don't think I caught a fish all day. And I shit you not, I could hear his voice from where I was. Was that a winner? Did you win?
I got second. That was the second place.
Second place. Okay, but look,
all of my fish within like 30 minutes. Look, it was awesome.
Enough about Scott. I'm tired of listening to this already. I'm gonna pretend like my internet broke or something. And
all right, well, we'll change that. Here's something
I got static, guys. I can't hear y'all no more.
So we got a couple boat questions.
Wait a minute. Before Scott steals the whole show, and on that subject, and I get, Scott, why it was so cool to beat those dudes in Florida. I won first place snook against the homeboys in Florida, and nothing chapped their ass worse than somebody from Texas coming over there and beating them in the snook division. I got that little trophy hanging in my office back there, man. Prize possession. Yes.
On that topic, snook came up last week, and we've got some snook stuff on the work, guys. We've we haven't had great fishing this week with all the storms, but I know we've been working on some snook stuff down south that we're going to hopefully get to y'all in the next few weeks. But the snook population, I put that post up. I shared it from 5 years ago that I called a 29 and a 30 back to back down in South Padre. And I've caught 3 more since then. I caught a 27 and a 28 and a 29 in a similar area in the last 2 years. And, you know, where they're at, why they're there, that we could spend hours on luck. But I talked to several guys, people that have been tuning into this and bite me. And man, I think they said they caught 16 to 18 inch snook on topwaters outside of Gladys last week. And lots of people reporting just lots of really young snook are being caught in the bay systems. And even as far up, you know, here. And I won't have Caleb start texting me and yelling at me about some of his snook holes up north, but they look like they're making a comeback. Or I don't even know if a comeback's the right word for Texas, but they're becoming more prevalent, and we're starting to see them pop up in random places.
Well, there was a time when my previous lab worked in homicide. We solved a case, and we got to go. It was some people that worked at an oil company, and they let us go up to their restaurant in the top of their oil business in downtown Houston. They had a full-on restaurant up there. They had all these pictures, and it was really cool to see them. I started looking at them and reading at the bottom of them, and it was a whole bunch of snook. It was obviously commercial. You know, I mean, they had them lined up, and there was an actual commercial snook fishery in the Galveston Bay area, and that was in the early 1900s. So, I mean, it's possible that we could really see the snook move up. And I mean, they're here already. I mean, I catch 2 or 3 a year off the jetties here in Port O'Connor. And with customers.
That was before the last ice age, and then they got pushed south. And now that the Earth is flat again, they're coming back.
Oh no, I got a better conspiracy than that. I had a guy tell me today, you know why that bay's so rough? And I was like, oh yeah, you piqued my interest on this one. He said, well, the freeze killed all the trout, and they were breaking the waves. They were piled so thick in East Maddie, and we don't have any now, so they just roll all day long.
Yeah, their tails were knocking them down. That's
what it was. I thought that was pretty good.
I believe that. That's what makes sense. Hey, but the helicopter. Watch. Go back to that Scott. Tell them about that one. Yeah. Yeah.
We're over there fishing. We're pre-fishing. We're in the Indian River Lagoon, and we were right by NASA, and they were rolling out one of the shuttles to the center there. So they were on high alert, I guess. But
they had those signs that said
there was signs everywhere saying, "Do not go past this point." And it looked really fishy back there, man. So we're fishing the edge of it. You know, we're throwing into it, and there was one whole shoreline of mangroves that do not step in. Don't even think about it. Don't look. Don't even look this direction. Look over here. So Dean has his morning tacos, and he's got to take a break in the mangroves. So he pulls his kayak up.
Hey, I live close.
I'm still out there just fishing away in the beautiful grass flats, you know, and got eel grass all around me and big reds moving around. And all of a sudden, this Black Hawk helicopter comes flying in from nowhere. And they hovered over us.
And I still say we didn't cross the line.
Dean comes waddling out of the mangroves.
Man, these dude had they had like NASA astronaut hats on and shit. Yeah.
Yeah, there was machine guns on that thing.
Yeah.
They were not happy about Dean trespassing into the mangroves there.
We did not cross the line. We were close.
You got to flirt with it sometimes. You know, those at least the line was marked. Those Louisiana lines get a little questionable sometimes, especially on tournament day.
Yeah.
Speaking of Louisiana,
that sucks.
We're gonna hit a couple boat ones here. Boy, we should just get Larry to chime on this one. He has such good luck with towing boats back and forth. But towing your boat. So I fish Southern Louisiana. I fish South Padre up, Mansfield. We do a lot of baffing, but Matagorda is not as great as it used to be. So we've been doing a lot of towing. I can tell you my checklist right now on boats. Number one, if you're going to pull it to Florida, put Goodyear Endurance tires on it. No questions asked. If you still have the factory trailer tires on there, swap your tires. Have 2 spares. Even if your 6th spare is just an Amazon steel wheel in the back of your truck, have 2 with you. Number 2, if you're not fishing Baffin or, East Maddie, but we don't dump into East Maddie, we get a flush when we come out. Florida's high salinity. Make sure you have saltwater hubs on your trailer. You can get on Amazon and order those things, and you can get 4 new hubs for $150, and in an hour you can change them out in your shop. I promise you, it's a lot better to change them in your shop than it is on the side of I-10 or 90, because we've all been there. Check your trailer boards. Make sure you don't have any rusted bolts. Hit them with an impact, suck them back in, and replace the strap on your boat. Because when you cross the Chafalai Basin, if you got a bad strap on your boat going to Florida, you're going to find out before you get off of it. And there ain't no place to pull over until you get to Baton Rouge. And that's questionable there. You got one rest stop in between it. So I lived in Louisiana for a few years, and I can tell you that checklist right there is huge if you're going to drag a boat to Florida and back, or to Padre, because 59 and 77 ain't any better. And
the worst road,
those are mandatory.
The worst road in the country is 90, coming out of Lafayette, going down. Like when I go to Grand Isle, one other thing, check your power pole. Tighten up that bolt on your power pole.
Yes.
We lost a stick on 90 somewhere. I don't know where. You got to Grand Isle, and it wasn't in the holder. The stick vibrated completely out. That is like a damn roller coaster. It's the worst road I've ever been on pulling a boat. I mean, the whole damn truck will start jumping.
Don't drive through Louisiana on the way to Florida. Go via Arkansas.
It's Shreveport to Mobile. It's a direct path. I'll tell you this: I've lost 2 license plates on 90 from them coming down and dragging. So here's a tip of the pros: if you're going to pull your boat to Florida, go get you some metal bands for that trip and put them on your license plate instead of bolts. So when your trailer comes down and if you haven't driven 90, one day you'll know what I'm talking about. I used to live off of it. I lost Noel's motor on 90.
He damn near did. He broke my jack plate.
Put stainless bands on your license plate so it can bend and flop a little bit. If you don't, when you come down, those old rusted boats are going to let go. So that's good. Dean, you got any kayak tips? Because I know y'all.
Man. Oh well, yeah. I can tell you if you're going to drive from Florida to Texas, do not leave your rods sticking up in the air, because they will be coated with those black bugs to the point that you will never. I don't remember if it was going there or coming back, but we had the little crate that held the rods. So man, the rods were poking up in the wind, and when we got there, they were so coated with them little love bugs. It was a nasty mess. So yeah. Put your rods down, tuck everything in, strap it down. If you want to keep it, put the paddle inside the truck with you if you want to have it there when you get there. So, any loose items, man. It's just, you don't want to think about that stuff. You don't want to have to be looking in your mirror constantly. And the tires, man, I mean, I can't reiterate the tires enough. Those tires that come on the truck. Shit, dude, I get in the summer down here, we get folks that drive from San Antonio or Austin or Dallas. I can't tell you how many trailers you see on the side of the road that, shredded their tires, just the factory stuff that comes on them. If you're going to drive from Dallas to Aransas Pass, man, upgrade the tires. It's the best insurance policy you will ever put on your boat trailer. It is way cheaper than jacking that damn thing up on the side of the freeway when everybody's buzzing by you going 100 miles an hour. It's just, it'll save so much headache. And I've done it, man. On those trips, all you're doing is looking in your mirror, constantly watching what's in the back. So
now, what Dean does is sleep. Dean ain't looking in no mirror. He's sleeping.
Hey,
While
when you can talk somebody else into driving, why would you think about it?
If you can sleep across the Chapala Basin, more power to you. Because
I slept through a hurricane in the Chapala Basin one time. I was so comfortable in the back seat of that truck. It were two of them in the front. I had the whole back seat to myself. I was watching lightning. I was watching those that rack getting bent into a position that I did not think it could survive. It was a shout out to Thule Racks. Y'all build a fine piece of equipment.
We did drive through a hurricane going to Florida.
Twice.
Yeah, twice.
God, I know we talk about this every single year. It seems like it's a horse we beat to death over and over. But do you have any plans to return to Louisiana and run some of the wintertime bull red trips? Not
this year, but maybe next year. This year's the last couple of years I've been real busy and just hadn't been able to do it. I was talking to Ron Ratliff. He's been over here hanging out in Seadrift the last few weeks, and we got talking about it some. I haven't been over there since the hurricane, so I kind of want to slide over there and take a look at it first. Maybe me and you slide in there and go poke around this winter a couple of days. I've got the big photo contest that I do every 2 years is this winter. That starts in January, February. So I'll be doing that this year. I'll send you the dates. I know we're going to do an AU filming. We're going to do 2 weekends, probably back to back into January. The weather sucks, but it's one of my favorite times to be over there. It's absolutely the best. It's absolutely the best, and I'll tell you the name of the game on that. One, there's a lot of things you can run into in Louisiana. That's why we run a metal boat specifically, because if you're not living over there every day, it changes every day and it's a different thing. But, we went last year in January and I think we did 24 reds over, I think 34, 36 inches, but we covered 97 miles in a day and a half. And so my fishing over there was simple. I mean, I could damn near see the ramp most days, and we were catching. We didn't even measure them. They were 25 to 30 pound fish. The biggest we got was like 36 pounds, all on fly, all sight casting. It's some fantastic stuff goes on over there in the wintertime.
That shit never happened when I went with you. When I went with you, we were in a hurricane.
Hey, it was 36 to 42 degrees and it rained at least 4 of the 8 hours both days we were there in January. And I mean, it's just grinding, right?
Yeah.
The thing for us was the tides were up really high. When I say high, we had 3 inches of 18 inches of grass showing. And the next morning we went to make the run and I came around a corner and my skiff and the pond that we ran through without having to lower the jack plate was dry. Without having to raise the jack plate was dry the next morning at 6:30. So, that's one thing about Louisiana. If that wind about Louisiana is you don't have our water's got to go out through the jetties. It's got to go out through a pass, San Luis Pass or Pass Caballo or whatever. It's got to go out through a funnel. Over there, it's wide open. The bay is the Gulf, and there's nothing but sandbars in the way. And so when it blows out over there, it can blow out so fast. It's unbelievable. I mean,
I went over there with Scott and it was so freaking cold. It was like minus something. I don't remember what the wind chill was. We went out there. I caught one fish. I was laying in the floor of the boat on the right out there. It was miserable. Caught one fish. I said, can we please go home now? And the next morning, whenever we got up, it was blowing over the bulkhead. It was white capping in the boat slip under the boat. And that was not fun weekend. I drove 18 hours to take the ass whipping of my life.
And that's why we're going to do 2 weekends this year, because the chances of us filming last year was zero. One day we didn't take the camera equipment out of the waterproof bag. Like it was foggy. It was raining. Then the wind started blowing. But, for people that are wanting to go over and do that, I mean, number one, you can always hire a guide as a mentor, not so much to go to catch fish, but to learn. And that's kind of, I've done that up and down the coast and had several guys that have kind of taught me the wintertime tactics over there. You can make it as fancy as you want. You can do whatever you want, but you can go over there if you got some kids or the bite slows down, get as close as you can to those inlets and get you a popping cork and a gulp, or get you the soft plastic of your choice that you can swim and suspend really, really slow, and just start working those points on the inlets and go from inlet to inlet to inlet, and you'll find fish. You may have to cover, ground like we did if the water gets blown out and you can't sit there in your little honey hole next to the ramp and eat tacos like Scott. But, it can be rewarding, but it's also not as challenging and as difficult as a lot of people make it out to be, right? You're covering ground, you're looking for fish, you're looking for bait, and you're working, we probably did 30 miles of shoreline on a trolling motor, and we hammered, and when we got on them, we'd find them in pockets and we'd pull 3 or 4 out over 100 yards and then, hop to the next one and work it again. But
what kind of battery did you have on that troll motor?
Ooh, that's why you put a 36 volt 112 on a 16-foot skiff, because you put that 70 amp hour lithium battery on there, and we didn't charge it for 2 days. Like that.
So we launched out of Grand Isle. We trolled to Cuba.
That was shorter and probably smoother too. That's one thing I'll say about over there is a good trolling motor and a good prop will go a long ways. And by a good prop, I mean one that you don't care leaving out there.
Yeah. The only place I've ever completely ruined a lower unit was in Louisiana, out of Grand Isle. And I don't even know what I hit. I was in the channel where all the big boats go. And I was running right down the middle of the damn channel and completely tore it up. But
there was a camper trailer there when we were there, in the middle, semi-floating. But yeah. So
after the previous hurricane, there was a car out there just sitting. You can see the top of it. And it wasn't anywhere near a road. I don't know how the hell it got over there. But there's stuff in Louisiana that's interesting.
I'll tell you this: if you do want to go do it, if you have redfish rods that are, like everybody's got them, I use the Laguna 7-foot medium, a little bit bigger drag on the reels. You can go over there and fight them with trout rods. Spinning reels and rods work good just because they fight big fish well, especially for guys that aren't accustomed to it. But if you want to go and grind and you want to pull 30 or 40, we caught 42s, 44s, having a little more ass in your back pocket, it never goes the wrong way. And being able to cast it in the wind, because it's if you're going to throw baits over there, long casts work well. If you can get away from the boat, especially if you're not in a poling skiff where you're sneaking up on stuff, you're on a trolling motor in a cat hole that's slapping and you can hear it 200 yards across the bay. The longer you can cast, the better. But I like to go with 7-foot medium. And then I step up a reel. I don't do 100 or a 150. I'll do the 200 with a little bit more drag on it.
Yeah, we're throwing 10 weight fly rods at them most of the time. 9s and 10s. I prefer a 10. And it's mostly because of the size of the flies that we're throwing. We're throwing some real meat at them. Those fish over there want something bigger. Those bigger fish. You can ask Caleb about not having enough rod. He showed up over there. He was going to tow one of my boats back. I had 2 boats over there for that season, and told him I'd take him fishing one day if he came over there and tow my boat back. So the very first one that he got was on the top water, and it blew up, and he reared back into it like it was some little Matagorda 6-7 pounder, and it was about a 20, 25, maybe even a little bigger than that. His rod broke in 3 places when he set the hook.
And I promise you, he well maintained that rod.
I'm sure it was in perfect condition. But yeah, it scared everybody on the damn boat.
Oh man. Oh yeah. It's a fun place to go. Curtis hit up there. Yeah, so we've been trying to do a big fishing trip every year. We did Alaska, we did Colorado the year before. We've done there with the sports world and the kids and stuff like that. We've kind of took basketball season off, and now we're doing a 6-week fishing season every winter. And we're going to do Louisiana 2 weekends. We're going to do Padre probably 2 weekends. The Brownsville Ship Channel is a fun place to fish in the wintertime, especially if you look up and down the whole Texas coast and it's just trash weather. You can still get into that and fish. If it allows us to, we're going to play in, we might go Wade Bappin once, and then we're definitely, depending on the weather and stuff, we're going to go over. I love to fish the south end of Calcasieu too. It's a closer ride. There's a lot of good VRBOs and places to stay over there. And that's a fun marsh to go and play in. That's pretty easy to get in and out. So that was kind of on our ticket for this winter.
And if I get that new boat, I might slide over here and we'll slide off and go catch some state water snappers.
Yes.
So you got 2 new boats now. What, you get number 3?
He's following my path.
He got 2 new boats. He got 2 new trucks. Got a new house. God dang, son.
I got a lot of debt.
Like I said, if I had Scott Knowles money, I'd throw mine away. There wouldn't be no need for it.
And I think that's kind of what we started the show with too. I think it's a good topic of, we've been programmed to think wintertime is big trout, wintertime's big trout, wintertime's bull reds in Louisiana. But this winter, we had some really good near shore calm days that you could go out and fish and target things. A lot better than we've had in the past. I would say our winter was actually a little tamer on the waves and the surf than our fall was.
It was definitely better. My tarpon season sucked because it was southwest wind every day. You know that. You were trying to do it too. And it was dirty, muddy, southwest, choppy, going against the grain of the swells. Every day was an ass whooping. Then the wintertime came, and it was just calm as it could be. I poled many, many days where I didn't have to worry about which way the wind was blowing. I could pole in any direction I wanted to. Our last winter was pretty damn cool. So I'm hoping that I have that same thing this year, and I can make some runs out there to the state water snapper.
Yes. Yeah, no, that would be, I think that's good. And I think that's, a lot of people post freeze are shifting their mindset in that ways, right? There's not 2 fish in the bay anymore. There's a lot more out there to go and kind of target. And I think people are starting to explore that. And honestly, I wish they would, because it'd give the bay a little bit of relief if we don't have 100 boats piled up on every shoreline and lines of drift fish. If we could get spread out a little better and learn that we just don't have to go wade the same spot in Baffin every Saturday morning, it'd be a lot of opportunity there. Just got my first boat. Any tips, areas to try for mangrove or sheephead? I'm fishing out of POC. No jack plate yet. Well, being that you don't have a tunnel, Scott, you ought to be able to answer this one phenomenally.
Mangroves and sheep's head in the coming months, as we get into the fall and winter, jetties. I mean, if that's what you want to target, go to the jetties and have at it. Mangroves on a normal, in the summertime, any of the docks, any kind of, they're structure fish. Any structure that's up and down the intercoastal, all the docks. There's a kid that sits there at the fishing center and flips live shrimp up underneath the dock and just absolutely hammers on the sheep's head and on the mangrove snapper all the time.
What would they rig up for fishing the rocks if they want to go out there and try to target some of those? Because they're also not just going to catch mangroves and sheep's head, target them on the rocks in the wintertime. That's kind of that's like river fishing. You don't know what you hook until you get it to the boat.
But on the sheep's head, you can usually see them. The sheep's head in the wintertime get all up in those rocks. I've heard that they're spawning that time of year. I don't know, but for whatever reason, they're you can sight cast to them up there, but most people throw a popping cork and keep the shrimp pretty close to the cork, and just the smallest shrimp you can get. I like a little single, like a number 1 kale hook instead of the old treble hooks and all that. They get it in their mouth a little bit better, and you can get past the teeth with that single hook, and you seem to get better hookup. Same thing with the mangroves. small shrimp, small jigs. I like to be in about 15 feet of water. I'll watch the depth off the jetty, and right along that point, just start dropping straight down on a moderate tide. You don't want a ripping tide, and you don't want a dead tide. You just kind of want that beginning or the end of it, and you can drop down in that 15 to 20 foot range where the rocks are sloping down. That seems to be the sweet spot for the mangroves for me. It's almost like crappie fishing. You drop down to the bottom, let it tick just enough weight to get you there, then reel up just one or two cranks and just wait a second, and you'll feel them.
Yeah. And if you can be, put your pride aside and not worried about being called a croaker fisherman, you can go into your local fishery store. And one thing we found, especially with the kids, work really well around the rocks is the chatterweights that all the croaker guys are using down south. And they make them in all different sizes. Instead of using little split shots or things like that, those things will sink a little bit slower, and you can get a big heavy one or you can get a little one. And then we'll just do, 18, 24 inches of fluoro with the 1/0 little, I like a little snail hook, circle hook, so that we don't have to sit there and pop them when they get it in their mouth as hard with them, and they get a little bit better hook sets. And we'll just run the trolling motor and anchor it on it with a GPS lock and just flip those up next to the rocks and let them sink down. And that's been pretty good too, when we just couldn't get them to come up, to the popping corks. What are you flipping down there, Dean, to try to pull some of those out for y'all's jetties?
Same thing, same stuff, man. Little tiny, even like a little 2-inch soft plastic, like a little 2-inch rat tail jig, anything that just weedless also works good, man. There's like so much. I mean, it's so many snags down there. It's kind of tough. But if you want the mangroves and the sheepheads, I mean, we have towards Ingleside where all the jetties are there, the little rock walls that they've built to prevent the erosion from the boat traffic in the channel. And it's loaded with sheephead. Over around Port Aransas, the little rock walls that are out in front of that, man, there's some guys that go over there and they just, I mean, they have a good old time on the sheephead. We have a lot of rock walls, jetty walls, all those things around, because the Corpus Christi ship channel goes right through the middle of it, and they're building a lot of little rock piles for preventing erosion on the islands. And man, you can pick one. Around the point of Ingleside, I got some buddies over here out of the marina that run, and I mean, they love the mangrove snapper. So those things are lit up at night because it's all industrial. And then in the daytime, they hit those rock piles, and I mean, they do pretty good on the mangroves. But the jetties at Port A, man, it can be loaded. I mean, you can walk on the jetties and you can just watch them. You can just see them swimming around down there. But it's never been one of the things that I go after. But man, there's the winter Texans that come down. They absolutely load up on the sheepheads. They love them.
And I would tell you two things. One, if you're wanting to target those, or you want some mangroves and you don't have a tunnel on your boat or a jack plate, and you're worried about running shallow, every ship channel in the state of Texas, Galveston even has some. When we get down further south, especially in Brownsville and some of those, this fall, you can just work all those banks, those barges. You got almost 12 miles of that channel there, and you can pull some really good mangroves out of that system down there. It's good. Tip for you: you don't have a jack plate yet. You want to fish Port O'Connor? Get on Google Earth, scroll back. I don't remember the year. It's either 11 or 13, and stuff changes. Remember that. But I think we actually got one in 18 too. There's a low tide satellite image if you go back through time. When you look at that low tide satellite image, you're going to be able to see all of your cuts and where they are. And then you can look at actually how small most of the cuts in Port O'Connor are. And I can tell you the one in front of Charlie's, you need to be able to run through about 5 inches of water right now if you don't have level tide. I ran through it. I know Jason and I ran through it when we were down there 2-3 weeks ago, and we had the jack plate on 6, and we can run through 6 inches of water, no problem. And we were scraping bottom at the bottom of the boat when we came through, and we were about 3 inches low. So it's use Google Earth, and that'll kind of give you some ideas of where you can go. I will tell you to start off, if you want to kind of do some things, go east, head out straight out the intercoastal, run past the little rock piles right there, cut north. You got some sandbars you can see on Google Earth that you can kind of miss and dodge, but you've got a lot of open water there in front of the old station and stuff like that. Those cuts are deep. If you're throwing live bait or shrimp, you can definitely catch a lot of fish right there, and you don't have to worry about trying to navigate through all the cuts and the passes and popping out. All right.
Portal Con is tricky, man. Get you a sea tow.
Yeah, get your sea tow. I can tell you the Colorado River, talking about things changing north of Altair, is completely different than it was 4 weeks ago before the hurricane, because I had a 3.2 hour lower unit explode last week testing props. And it's going to be a while before I get another lower unit. So we went with another motor in typical Jeremy Compton fashion.
They'll make more. Don't worry. They'll make you another one.
They are. It's ordered. It was a good situation. You know, I was real happy with it. Hey, you know what the best thing about that situation was? Is it was about 105 degrees. I had 30 minutes on the prop that we lost with all the internals of my lower unit. And I looked over at Jason. He's like, man, what are we going to do? I said, well, we don't have a lot of current and the wind's blowing into us. I bet you can run that trolling motor remote control on this boat before we get back to the boat ramp, because we were 5.5 miles away, and he got him 2.5 hours of trolling motor time. And he is an expert on running an Ulterra with a remote control now. So, you know, there's silver lining and everything.
Yeah, I hope you had your sunscreen available that day too.
No, it was brutal. It was. Hey, the radio worked though. That was a plus. But Turtle Box was rocking and rolling. We were listening.
Could you imagine having to sit there and just talk to each other through all of that? Oh my God.
Well, the first question started off is, what happened? I was like, honestly, can't tell you, other than there's a slight sheen behind us and our motor goes to 6,000 RPMs. I was like, we spun the prop and I raised the lower unit up, and it wasn't spun. The lower unit was split.
What else do you need to know? I mean,
do you have any other technical questions you'd like for me to answer today?
And no propeller, no pro, no go.
It's like Caleb's Bluetooth propeller.
Hey man, just be glad you didn't break the propeller off the troll motor.
Yes.
You'd have been.
So here's a little fact. I'm actually going to do a review on this one here in the next few weeks. In all my research, which I pound things to death, I didn't realize that Mercury made a standard model V6 up to 225 horsepower. So their 150 XS is a 4, and it comes in at like 456. Your 175 is a V6, and it comes in at 470 something. And then they go to the V8 model, and all the XSs and the Rs are V8 from 200 up. Well, that's a 525 pound motor plus trim and which lower unit you get on it. So we were really trying to just float as skinny as we could in it. So we didn't do it. Well, we called Mercury, told them, hey, we're getting a good hole shot. We're not getting a good top end. We're getting a good top end. We're not getting a good hole shot. We're on 7 props, like we're going to need to repower. And they were like, man, you need to run our offshore 225 V6. It only weighs 21 pounds more than the Pro 51 XS. And I was like, sometimes we don't need the fancy stuff. We need the right stuff. So we're putting a 225 on there. V6, it's light. It's the offshore model, so it's really quiet. They insulate the cowling better. The exhaust is tuned a little different, so it's not loud. So it's going to be a plus. But I pick it up in the morning, and we're going to go. Caleb and I are actually going to the river not the Colorado River. We're going to go do some break-in and start checking the reds, because it's that time of year that they should be starting to move in.
Emphasis on break.
We're going to break something. I mean,
I know you will.
We're going to break something. I got 2 props this time, so I'm not going with just one.
But do you have 2 lower units?
I will shortly. Well, I got 1.5 right now, Dean. That's better than 1. It's been a tough week. So, man, this is a question that it gets a lot of fire right now on the social medias. I'm gonna let you fire off on this one, Scott. First, on are we seeing any better quality and quantity of trout since a regular chase, or too early to tell?
A little too early to tell on the quality, but I mean down south they are, but they were under those regulations prior to us.
From the beginning.
They had it from the beginning, so they're starting to see it. I am seeing more trout. We're catching trout in places that we haven't caught trout for the last couple of years. Poling around some of those backwaters where I took you, we went poling that one day. Places where in the past, I would say, as we're cutting across an open spot from flat to flat and it's a little deeper water, I'd always tell people, go ahead and drop a couple lines in there. And as we go across, let it sink down, you'll catch a trout or two. It had gotten to a point where we weren't catching any. And now we're starting to pick them back up again. So I think there's more trout. I think the quality will come as we get further into this.
I think so. We've had some good days in POC. We had 150 fish a day about a month ago. Just caught it right, and they fed, and the bite just kept coming on, and it died. But 90% of those trout were 12 to 16 inches, which is, the fishery there is coming back. The fact that we're not going to be able to throw every one of those into a cooler this fall and get a little bit better on our spawn, I think is definitely going to help us. What are you seeing, Dean, down there with you?
Man, it's a little early to tell. This winter will be quite interesting, though. You give them a little more time. What is cool is to know that every trout over 20 inches is going back in the water. There's nothing more entertaining to me than seeing the croaker heroes that we got out here in Aransas Pass posting their pictures of their 6 17-inch trout with the "we whacked them and stacked them today." Boy, we were out of there. So I'll up. Yeah. Oh, we done by 7:30. And they got all their little trout hanging up on their hooks. And they got the people looking all disgruntled in the picture. They're like, you mean we're done already? You mean, what am I supposed to do all day? But yes, I couldn't be more entertained by the fact that I am seeing these pictures of these dudes hanging up all their 16 and 17-inch trout and going to the house, go home early, get out of my damn water, do whatever the hell you're going to do. But yes, so every trout over 20 back in the water, we will see the results. We will see them. It hasn't been that long. This winter will be interesting. Next winter will be even better. The next winter after that, it will only get better. There is no doubt. And I hope the croaker dudes all go out of business, and I don't care what they think about what I think about them.
I'll say this. I won't say that.
No, man. So here's the problem. Right here where I live between Rockport and Aransas Pass, it is croaker central. And it is a tourist area. It just is. The pressure on the resource is immense. And the fact that is what they're hanging on the sticks, opposed to a pile of 24-inch trout whenever they're really biting, then those trout are going back in the water.
100%. And I've seen on both sides, but I've heard more people, honestly, in the last 3 months, once a little bit of the bitterness got over, from guys that were, filled to the freezer. Been like, man, we went out and fished.
They're still bitter.
We cooked 3 17-inch trout, and they were amazing. We had fresh fish, and you know what? I had a customer with me, so I went with a guide, and we caught our trout, and he asked us, "Hey, y'all want to keep fishing?" And we kept fishing, and then we went and fished some deep water and drifted, and we sat there and laughed, and we were on the water for 8 hours, and we caught all sorts of different things, and then it was just a good experience. And I just look at them and say, "Hey, welcome to what everybody else is doing that y'all are mad at." Right?
And so all bullshitting aside, the culture takes time to change. Hopefully we're at a crossroads in the culture of trout fishing in Texas, that the whack 'em and stack 'em days are becoming a thing of the past. That is no longer the status quo of that is what is expected. Maybe we can. I mean, sometimes it takes generations to change people's minds and their mindset about the way it is. But hopefully, we are creating a cultural change. That people understand what's going on out there, and it becomes a topic of conversation, and it really does change the next generation.
And I think, this next question ties right into that. You guys live, breathe, eat fishing, much respect. You get burned out doing podcasts, running trips, talking fishing. What's your go-to getaway?
When I run out of things to do, I come on and do another webinar.
You've been slinging some arrows at hogs here lately.
Oh man, hunting is the shit, man. I've been staring at my cameras every day, man. The pigs are taunting me, but it's still just too damn hot to get inspired. But every time I look at that camera, it's like, your days are numbered, son. Eat it up. Enjoy your corn.
Scott, if you don't say anything but building a house, I'm going to know you're lying, because that's been your passion for 3.5 years.
Yeah, he's got 2 houses. He needs another one to go with his 4 boats.
Yeah.
Chicken coop.
Yeah, Kirill just came in with the chicken coop. I got projects all the time. I mean, I've always got something else to build, something to work on. Maybe right before I got on here, I was changing out a carburetor on one of the weed eaters, just stuff like that. Just piddling in the shop, fixing stuff, mowing, working on my property. This property
fixing your rods and reels.
Yeah, sometimes, occasionally, but the property is that's my passion. I've got some guys coming out from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They're going to come out here in a couple of weeks and talk to me about building a wetlands in the backside of the property for the whooping cranes. I already got whooping cranes that come to the property anyway, and they're going to do a cost share deal with me to put in a solar well in the back, so I can do a nice wetlands that I can control the water levels.
If you have that, when you build that chicken coop, you're going to have a coyote reserve.
Hey, what you really need to do is tell them that your pond's not staying full enough for the whooping cranes and get them to drill you a well.
Well, that's what they're going to do. They're going to drill me it's a cost share private program it's some private funding that they get to put in a solar well in the back, and I'm going to be able to run that. So yeah, that in my wildlife photography, that's my real getaway. Just going out and sitting with the camera and getting some cool shots.
Awesome,
man.
All right,
I got the mega bucks on my game cams, and oh Lord, man, come on.
I've got mine set right now. I got to go run them for the biologist next week, and it's we'll be excited. So, all right, I know this one gets brought up a lot on the Texas coast. Sea tow or towboat? What's y'all's preference?
That depends on where you are. Some of them are better in different areas. Around here, Port O'Connor, sea tow. I mean, they live down at the end of my road. I've known them for a long time. One of the son that's running it, his dad was an officer with me in Houston, and I said I've known them forever, and they're right there on the water at Charlie's, and they know this bay like the back of their hand. They can get anywhere. You can kind of just describe where you are, and they can find you.
Which one is the red boats?
That's towboat.
Okay, towboat dominates my area. It's the red ones. They got airboats, man. They got big boats, little boats. They got everything, man. So I just happened to see those guys. Fortunately, I'm probably going to put the jinx on myself as soon as I open my mouth. I have not required their services in quite some time, but I probably need to put that number in my phone now that I opened up my big mouth and said something.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, the towboat US, man, those guys are anytime. That's who I see. I mean, they Johnny on the spot around here, man.
Yeah, and I run CETO right now. And it was more of an area thing where we're at, because when we got that membership, we were Matagorda and Port O'Connor predominantly. Now that we're going up and down the coast, I'm not even opposed to having both, because if we're running out of South Louisiana or we're running out of Padre, $300 a year when you're in a pickle where you're at is a lot better than sitting there for 8 hours getting attacked. So it's worth it.
You pay more than that when you're sitting there.
100%. Noah, where can they get your see your photos at? What's their website?
It's scottnullphotography.com.
scottnullphotography.com. You can also get some Bite Me gear there too.
Yeah, there's Bite Me gear on there, and then you can order prints. You can pick out whatever size you want. You can put it on whatever canvas or metal or however you want it. They frame it, and it ships directly to you. I don't have to. It doesn't go through me.
Okay. Yeah, and I saw some of your prints the other day at the house, man. Dude, really cool stuff. I'll tell you, he puts the time in for it. He's that's why he's a good fly fisherman, because he lays on the side of a mud bank in a embankment like Rambo with clay covered all over his face, trying to take a picture of a painted bunting. You know,
I do some things.
It's worth the wait, I'll tell you that. Talking about CETO and stuff, I think this is a good one right here. Suggestions you have for a first-time boat buyer, what to look for, used versus new, etc. I think this question would have been a lot different when interest rates were at 2.5% and 3% versus what they are now. And if you haven't bought a boat lately and tried to finance it, don't. You'll be a little alarmed at what those rates are. But I will tell you this: when buying a used boat, in my opinion, first and foremost, buying a boat, I use the 90-10 rule. If you're going to run one boat, pick what you're going to do 90% of the time and get a boat that works for that. Don't chase the 10 if you don't have multiple boats. You know, we've always ran a skiff and a bigger 24-foot bay boat. We've gone to a 21 now mid-tower, but we put shockwaves in it so we don't have to take the beating like Dean talked about, and can still get skinny. But we'll have a big boat, 24, 25, probably in a few years to do the nearshore stuff in there. But use the 90-10 rule first and foremost. It doesn't matter what you buy. If you get a boat that doesn't work for what you want to do all the time, you won't use it. And second on that, go to somebody and establish a relationship. A Sport Marine, Chris's, you can go down the list. Everybody buys boats from somebody. Establish a relationship with the person you're going to get a boat from, because when you have problems with it, that relationship goes a lot longer than calling somebody you've never talked before at 6 p.m. on a Friday in a pickle because you got a trip coming. And I'm not saying don't buy a boat off Facebook Marketplace. I'm just saying a relationship with your boat dealer will help you a long ways in. And they'll take some ownership too if that motor has problems on an older motor.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. I mean, I tell people that all the time. I get a lot of guys that come out with me on the Poland skiff and they get all excited about it. And man, I want to get a Poland skiff. Be careful, because once you get a Poland skiff, you're really limited, you know, as far as running across open water, running across open bay, and you're not going to be going out and drifting the flats and doing stuff like that across, you know, cutting across the Espiritu Santo to go to the island on a rough day. It's going to beat you to death. You better know what you're getting into. And you see that a lot. You see a lot of people, you know, in Galveston, I saw people buying shallow sports. You know, they fish Galveston most of the time, but they go to Port Mansfield occasionally. So they want to buy a shallow sport for Port Mansfield. Then they get just an ass whooping in Galveston Bay. Buy a boat for what you're going to do the most of. And then every boat's a compromise. And so then you compromise on going to Port Mansfield.
You know what somebody needs to invent? A boat with like water wings, like some fold out outriggers where you can go across the middle of the bay and then fold them in and then pole
like
that.
The Batmobile.
Yeah.
All right. We got a few more. I'm going to hit just a couple of these real quick, and then we're going to wrap it up. We've been on here quite
That's
a bit.
genius.
What's the best Laguna action for keeping corkies in the zone for the longest since we're coming up in the fall? Medium or light? Man, that is a preference question. I can tell you, if you're going to be a dedicated corky guy, a Trident from Laguna, since you're asking specifically for Laguna, is a really good rod, but I like to add an inch or two to it. If I'm going slower and not as erratic, I'll throw a corky on a lattice, and Laguna will get mad at me for saying that. But I like the longer rod because I can load it and then get more of a dart out of it. If I'm just going to be twitching faster and I want something smaller, the Trident is a really, really good rod. But you can talk to those guys also. Same thing with Waterloo. You can go in and say, hey, this is what I'm targeting. This is the depths I'm fishing at. This is what I'm wanting to do. Do you have something on the shelf, or do we need to tweak it? Because I'm a tweaker, and I like to, not in the drug sense, in the rod sense. I'm messing with them constantly. But I like to add
we got a whole bunch of them in our hands this fast.
Woo, yeah. I don't know if they're using Laguna rods or Waterloo. So, but it's one of those things, right? Like I like a little longer rod if I'm going to be doing corkies, just because I can load that bait a little better and get a longer run. I also have 2 blown wrists because I've been loading baits for 15 years, and maybe it's not the path to go down. So a Trident is a really good starting point. You might add an inch to it. Talk to them about that. If you really want to get sporty with it and you want to be able to swap back and forth to tails, I like a lattice too. So, all right. On that note, I think we're going to wrap it up, guys. Appreciate everybody being here. This was a fun one. It was fun getting to go live and getting some fresh faces in here and seeing the regulars. Pile of information. If you have questions, hey, I'll tell you all this. Get on the forums, post your questions. We're checking them. We'll get back to you. If we don't, we'll get it to one of the guides. We'll get it to one of the pros. We'll get him to respond to you personally and get you an answer there. So good stuff. Hopefully the next
week. And great job hosting, man. I would like to mention that you did a much better job than Caleb.
I appreciate that. You know,
hopefully we see you back next week.
Hey, I'd love to. It's a really good time. I enjoyed it, and I always enjoy talking to y'all and getting to see y'all. So
it's a pleasure.
Keep it going good, and we'll see y'all next week.
All right, guys.